strong.
Chapter 121, Unforgettable Start High-speed text sync readings on your phone. Yi Fuxian's words fell, and the eyes of many people instantly froze there, staring at the handsome figure. Practicing piano music just for spiritual cultivation. Just a moment ago, Yi Fuxian persuaded Qin Zong's most famous young genius, Bai Qiu, in such a way by using Qin Yin's magic. He now told Tianzi that he practiced music for spirituality, not his specialty. Bai Qiu's face darkened, and the battle so far had not been very glorious for him. He wanted to strongly respond to Yi Fuxian's embarrassment, but the previous battle was clearly not enough. Now Yi Fuxian said, what did he mean by saying this? Cough. In the distance, the flower in the void coughed dryly. Hua Ziyu on the black wind carving flickered, and for the rest of his life, his eyes stared round. He glanced at Bai Qiu sympathetically. Not to mention other people, even Yi Tianzi froze when he heard Yi Fuxian's words. His eyes flashed, looked at the handsome figure on the Fenghua platform, and he smiled and said, anyway, use your abilities to fight. Right. Thank you, Your Majesty. Yi Fuxian slumped, then turned around, smiling at Bai Qiu. I also want to see what you're good at. Bai Qian said with a grimace on his face, and then hit the piano, and the piano sounded again. If he can't beat Yi Fuxian, he will lose his face today. At the time of Bai Qiu's piano, there was lightning and thunder, and the situation changed, and it was still the previous song. Yi Fuxian took a step forward, and a brilliant light appeared. The life and soul of the golden-winged dapping bird blossomed out. In an instant, everyone's eyes froze again, and they looked at the life and soul that had appeared behind Yi Fuxian in shock. Life and soul twins. Many people were shaking inside. Yi Fuxian had fought as Master Qin Yin before, and Can's soul had been revealed. At this time, there is also a golden winged rock, twin souls. At this moment, the talents understood that they not only underestimated Hua Jiu, but also underestimated Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian, the rest of his life, and Hua Jiu, the three mysterious visitors from the seven-star glory world, seemed destined to set off a storm at the Fenghua party. The rest of their lives and Hua Jiu had already revealed their glory. Now, it was Yi Fuxian's turn. He forced Bai Qiu to attack with full strength, but he told Yi Tianzi that he only studied piano music for cultivation purposes. He is not only a violin master. After that, he released a second soul. Bai Qiu, who had started playing, also frowned, and looked at Yi Fuxian coldly. He fought against Yi Fuxian in the Fa Xiang field and took advantage, but at this point in the battle, the light was completely taken by Yi Fuxian. Thinking of this, the French phase was released, and many Gukins appeared in the void. When he played, the vibration resonated, and a terrible breath swept over, and the air on the Fenghua platform became extremely maniacal. Qin Yinsheng's spell, crazy thunder slashed towards where Yi Fuxian was, but seeing Yi Fuxian's body flashing, lightning flashed in the air. Fast. Everyone saw the figure standing in the air. Yi Fuxian slapped the wings behind him, and the wind spell attached to him to make it faster. His palm stretched out, and a metallic aura suddenly condensed into a golden staff. He held it in his palm. Stepping forward, an invisible momentum suddenly exploded, and several lightning bolts exploded. Yi Fuxian did not dodge this time, but parted with the stick. The thunder exploded and then disappeared. Yi Fuxian's body was as stable as Mount Tai. Climb and get stronger. The piano music is very loud, and a storm is gradually forming. At the same time, the sound of the piano constantly penetrates into his ears, and he must be replaced with the atmosphere of the piano sound. The world is dark, lightning and thunder, and Bai Qiu's piano music contains attacks, double mental attack and spell attack. Yi Fuxian's eyes were slightly stunned. With strong spiritual power in the soul of the eye of the storm to withstand the influence of the other party's artistic atmosphere, his body flickered and turned into golden lightning to strike forward. As a piano sound master, Yi Fuxian naturally understood what the piano master's weakness was. Qin Yin master can withstand strong people who can only practice martial arts and not spiritual spirits. The strong Qin master can also use Qin Yin to release spell attacks, but there is an obvious weakness in close combat. How can Master Qin Yin fight if he is close? Of course, it is not easy to get close to a piano master. Seeing Yi Fuxian's killing, a terrible Qinyin storm exploded towards him at the same time, and wanted to destroy the space, but Yi Fuxian's body suddenly drew a beautiful curve. There was no hard resistance to attack, instead, the curve moved forward. Bai Qiu's 10 fingers were very fast, frantically strumming the strings, and the magical attack made by the piano sounded instantly changed direction. Mental power attacks can cover all directions, but the spells released by the piano music clearly can't. Everyone saw that the magic attack was constantly changing its position, and the golden staff in his hand continued to dance as Yi Fuxian, who was wearing the golden winged dapping wings, flickered. Big trend. He's gathered. Everyone saw Yi Fuxian's action flash. While avoiding the tone attack, Yi Fuxian also gathered. The flickering body gave off a mysterious impression. Stronger. Baiqiu naturally discovered this, but what about it? His piano sound always contains a mental attack. How long can Yi Fuxian last? But at this moment, Yi Fuxian's body suddenly stopped, splitting the explosion into a storm. I saw his body standing in the sky above Baiqiu, standing proudly, and there was an astonishing trend in his body, which was not a burly body, but gave the illusion of a strong beach, as if unshakable. Dark clouds covered the sky, lightning flashed and thundered, and the wild weather turned into a terrifying cutting space for sharp blades, heading in the direction where Yi Fuxian was standing. Yi Fuxian's hands danced with a golden stick. The majestic momentum continued to crush the raging storm. Wings flap. Yi Fuxian stepped out. He slashed with a stick and opened the ground. The horror storm ahead was split in two. Paragraph. The power of this attack. Everyone saw this scene, but felt the heart tremble. The storm was split apart. How terrifying the power was under the sweep of the stick, and the whole world seemed to be used by it. The golden body flashed. Yi Fuxian moved forward, and followed the split road to Baiqiu below. This time he didn't dodge anymore, didn't change direction, and faced Baiqiu's attack head-on. The general trend has been achieved. 9 attacks in the sky. When there is a trend to open the world, anyone who gets in the way and kills. The wind howled, there was the roar of the thunder dragon, and the storm was so terrifying that it was astonishing, as if the sky was about to shatter. Yi Fuxian's long stick dances, and the potential is stronger. The storms of heaven and earth seem to be used by him as well. With this potential, Tianxing 9 strikes a second blow and shattered. Body. His eyes were extremely strange, and his mental strength was constantly being affected. However, with mental strength and strong will, he endured that power, and when the 9 strikes of heaven and earth, spirit broke out, his spiritual will had also been upgraded to another level. Baiqiu's face changed, and there was a violent meaning in the sound of the piano. Such a powerful piano sound magic couldn't stop Yi Fuxian from advancing. Looking at the step-by-step, his face is very ugly. Yi Fuxian's convergence potential is getting stronger and stronger, as if it will destroy everything. Baiqiu's 10 fingers fluttered and the heavens and earth's aura raged, but at the same time, Yi Fuxian's body moved, carrying a trend forward, splitting in the air, and flattening everything. The void seemed to explode, and the golden mace swept out, banging the spell that Baiqiu was attacking, all the way down, unstoppable. Baiqiu was wrapped in a wind spell, his body drifted away, and the sound of the piano became less coherent. When he retreated, Yi Fuxian split all the golden sticks in his hands and flew out, turning into golden ribbons to hit Baiqiu. Seeing this scene, Baiqiu immediately put away Kan's soul. The wind spell wrapped the body back quickly, and at the same time hurriedly condensed the spell to fight back. The golden streamer penetrated everything, although the strength was weakened, but it still hit Baiqiu's body. Wow! Baiqi spat out blood directly, his face turned pale as paper, and the flying body fell into the wind. Table edge. The turbulent storm gradually dissipated. On top of the Fenghua terrace, Yi Fuxian stood proud and peerless. At this time, the vast space was strangely quiet, but the hearts of many people trembled. Yi Fuxian, it glorified the kingdom with 7 stars and defeated Baiqiu's genius, Qin Zongfa's genius. The wild figure, the impressive momentum, was imprinted in everyone's mind. The people on Qin Zong's face were all pale, and their shame was defeated by Baiqiu, the representative of Qin Zong's younger generation, by Yi Fuxian in the lower third realm. Genius. Qin Zong's first son, Fenghubang candidate. Kang Chia, a Kangai Academy disciple, stood in the void to watch all this happen, and he was very restless. He remembered the scene of taking Yi Fuxian to participate in the first test. At that moment, he pointed to Baiqiu and said to Yi Fuxian that it was Qin Zong's legal state. Genius, one of the most wanted people on the Fenghua list. When Baiqiu wanted to accept Yi Fuxian as a piano boy, he also thought that Yi Fuxian was lucky and appreciated by Baiqiu. He deliberately self-violently in front of 3 Yi Fuxian .com with a touch of pride. Now think about it, it was really funny. He came out, but the 3 of them showed a dazzling light. Everyone is not calm inside. At this time, Yi Fuxian saw Baiqiu climb to the edge of Fenghuatai, smiled, and said, "Do you want me to be your piano boy?" After hearing this, many people looked at Baiqiu. He even had Yi Fuxian be the piano. Almost. Baiqiu looked at Yi Fuxian coldly, but saw Yi Fuxian smiled indifferently, said, "Don't look at me like that. Even if you train in Qin Zong, you have no chance to surpass me in 1 or 2 years." Everyone remembered Baiqiu's words after Yi Fuxian's battle yesterday, and Baiqiu's proud look at that time. Many people had a hint of sympathy when they saw Baiqiu. Everything at the Fenghua banquet would be unforgettable for the rest of his life. Look at the word app. Visit under the app. Chapter 122, Coming One by One. Truly unforgettable throughout his life, Baiqiu is one of the most wanted people on Fenghua's list, proud and confident. When he saw that Yi Fuxian had good talent, he let him be his own pianist. In his opinion, Yi Fuxian should take this opportunity. After that, there was some friction between them. All this, he will prepare dinner at the Fenghua banquet. And decided, he prevented Wang Yu from attacking Yi Fuxian to humiliate Yi Fuxian, but in the end, he was defeated. The genius of Qin Zong, who is in the state of law, and the voice of Fenghua Bang, is defeated by those who are in the realm of 7-star glory, even with pitiful words. Bai Qiu, is he still on the Fenghua list? In the hearts of everyone on the Fenghua platform, he turned to Yi Fuxian. He was previously greatly underestimated and locked down the Fenghua list first. They even faintly felt that Yi Fuxian had a great chance to enter the top 3 of the Fenghua list. This battle was too shocking. This man is crazy. On the side of the throne, Princess Yi Lingxi smiled at Yi Fuxian with a smile, and she didn't expect that Yi Fuxian, who played the piano with her at the evening party, was so powerful. It's confidence. Yi Tianzi smiled, and there was a glance in his eyes. Everyone knew that Yi Fuxian was right. Don't say a year or two. Without an accident, Bai Qiu would never be able to surpass Yi Fuxian. Now, this shame, he does not want to rub. Bai Qiu dragged his injured body, stepped forward, and headed into the air. His back is full of decadence. A former Tianzhou man who had high spirits and dazzling glory before, only lost one spirit completely after one battle. Yi Fuxian raised his head and glanced at Wang Yu in the void. There was a sharpness in his eyes, and he said coldly, "Get down." Just because the fairies defeated Lin Yueya, Wang Yu in the realm of law dares to retaliate against the fairies and is angry with Hong Yan. Looking for death. Are you going to fight Wang Yu again after defeating Bai Qiu? Everyone's heart trembled, and he actually came one by one. He gazed at the world of 7-star glory and thought geniuses in the rule of law were nothing. Wang Yu raised his eyebrows. Yi Fuxian and Bai Qiu's battle was naturally in his eyes. Obviously, he was also surprised that Yi Fuxian was in power. If it wasn't just Bai Qiu's block, Yi Fuxian would be the one fighting Yi Fuxian. But at this time, watching Yi Fuxian's anger, Wang Yu's expression looked serious. The huge scorching hot wings bloomed, full of flames. Wang Yu's body descended and came to the opposite side of Yi Fuxian, standing in the air. Yi Fuxian stretched out his hand, and the metallic aura fused again, turning it into a golden stick, stepping forward, and immediately giving birth to a powerful momentum that erupted instantly. Oh! Wang Yu's body ignited a fierce flame instantly, and he was bathed in a blazing light. The wings of the French phase shook, and the wind suddenly passed. His body was slaughtered straight at Yi Fuxian, not waiting at all. Yi Fuxian gathered momentum. He had previously seen the battle between Yi Fuxian and Bai Qiu, and naturally knew that Yi Fuxian's combat skills were becoming stronger and stronger, before defeating him. Behind Yi Fuxian, the golden-winged Dapeng's wings flickered, and the wind spell increased. His body shook upwards, spinning in the air, and the wind continued to beat against him. Invisible trends gather and grow stronger and stronger. In the sky, the terrifying fire dragon snake swallowed into Yi Fuxian's body, and wanted to block the void. The dragon rolled towards Yi Fuxian's body, and the fiery flames would burn him. Yi Fuxian's body became faster and faster. Surprisingly, people only saw their bodies continue to improve. Just as the python was about to catch up with Yi Fuxian, its body crossed a beautiful arc. Instead of going up, he smashed a stick into the sky and opened the world. With just one stick, the dragon python was over. It shattered, and at the same time the stick continued to run at Wang Yu, who came after him. Wang Yu did not run away, his soul blossomed, and he was a terrible fire bird. His body seemed to be on fire, and on his body, there was an illusory fire bird that rushed out towards Yi Fuxian, with an extremely hot flame. The golden mace swept over everything and struck directly at Wang Yu's body. Wang Yu's body turned into a terrifying fire giant bird. His palms, like sharp claws, collided head-on with the mace, an extremely terrifying force. When it broke, the power of the flame swept and burned for Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian retreated with a strong body, and his body spun in the air. Everyone saw that she had an amazing trend, and went down again. However, Wang Yu, as the Prince of Law, is also good at melee attacks. He is not afraid. The big wings flash, the fire is surrounded by many large birds, the fire sweeps the sky. Fight for Yi Fuxian. The two collided again, and the audience looked at the two figures in the void in shock. The flames swept across the void, and Yi Fuxian's body seemed to be on fire. Wang Yu is good at intimacy, not afraid of Yi Fuxian's strength. Everyone's heart trembled. This battle, Yi Fuxian probably won't be able to win. At this time, they saw that Yi Fuxian's strength was getting stronger and stronger, and Tianxing 9 hit the third blow, killing him. When the two men collided, a terrifying airflow spread to all four sides. They saw the two corpses in the void frozen and then separated. Yi Fuxian is still above the sky, he is still in shape, the majestic situation around his body is still terrible. This attack is terrible. People stared at the two blank figures, their hearts trembled slightly, and the Major Destiny, who was good at the power of law, fought head-on, and Yi Fuxian's attack was strong. Wang Yu stared at Yi Fuxian blankly and said coldly, "What else do you have?" Yi Fuxian looked at him. Inside his body, blood coiled, the emperor's tactics worked, and bright brilliance flowed into every part of his body. Then, the great momentum became stronger and stronger, even, fainting shows the momentum of an emperor. The terrible will broke, and then the baguette in his hand danced again. 9 strikes in the sky, one attack is stronger than one strike. The flower of each attack requires the cooperation of a strong spiritual will, otherwise the power of 9 strikes in the sky cannot be exerted. Yi Fuxian can only use the first 3 attacks, but in the East China Sea after the battle in the city, the mysterious emperor will give his strange technique, which changes his body. With the cooperation of the emperor's tactics, the heavens and the earth strike 9 attacks, which can bloom a brighter light. Everyone saw that Yi Fuxian's momentum was getting stronger and stronger. The 3 previous attacks seemed to all increase on his body, and Ling Tian's battle broke out. At this moment, Wang Yu's face changed. Oh! The fiery red wings instigated him, his body trembled, and rushed towards Yi Fuxian. He sensed the danger. But as soon as his body came out, Yi Fuxian looked at him, his wings flickered, and there seemed to be a sonic boom in the space. Yi Fuxian rushed to Wang Yu with a tremendous momentum. The 4th punch swept, and a rolling shadow appeared in the sky, flattening everything. The fire birds that rushed towards Yi Fuxian were all crushed, and Wang Yu looked embarrassed, but with a sharp edge in his eyes, he still killed Yi Fuxian. Many stick figures turned into one, condensed into one stick, swept away. Wang Yu only felt an irresistible force sweeping over him. His face was pale, and then everyone heard a scream. The golden stick broke through everything, hit Wang Yu's body, and smashed him to the ground. However, all this did not stop. Yi Fuxian's wings fluttered, his body continued to rise, the golden stick continued to fall down, and a stick hit Wang Yu's body, making Wang Yu scream and be smashed all the way from a height. Down. Boom! With a loud sound, Wang Yu was hit on the Fenghua platform after being struck by countless sticks. Blood spurted from his mouth. There was no trace of blood, and he couldn't feel the slightest strength. Everyone's eyes were already dull, looking at Wang Yu's fallen body and Yi Fuxian who was still standing on top of him. This. They felt that Wang Yu was afraid that he would not be able to participate in the next battle. Although Yi Fuxian wouldn't really erase it, at least he and Feng Hubang missed it. Others, isn't that cool? Yi Fuxian said coldly, and Wang Yu bullied the fairy head for Lin Yueya. In this case, he would be perfect. Everyone was silent. Wang Yu intimidated the horror of Lin Yueya in the realm of law. Then, Yi Fuxian fought for him for his girlfriend, who can say anything. Moreover, Yi Fuxian used the 7-star glory world to force him to lose his fighting power. In the void, Lin Yueya's beautiful eyes stared at Yi Fuxian's figure, and her heart was also very restless. Yi Fuxian, who has defeated the strongest in the 2-phase world, is invincible and unmatched in style, even if he has been overshadowed by the rest of his life before the top 3 on the Fenghua list, as if he can see it name it. Many people looked at the emperor, and saw that the emperor was smiling, his eyes were calm, and he couldn't see what he was thinking, but he would definitely appreciate this talent. Put him down. The strong man in the Wang family looked embarrassed and waved his hand. Someone immediately went to Feng Huatai and helped Wang Yu down. I thought he could let go of the light today, but he didn't want to be embarrassed. It was okay to be angry at Hong Yan, but the problem was that he was crushed by the girlfriend of the person he bullied, which was a bit embarrassing. Many people looked at Yi Fuxian and saw that it seemed that he still did not continue. At this time, they saw Yi Fuxian slowly looking up and looking at the Kangai Academy disciples. Then, they fell on top of Yu Zhang's body with a bright smile. Yi Fuxian said lightly, "Now it's your turn." His voice fell, and Yu Zhang's eyes hardened instantly. Not only him, but also the strong person in the vast space, his eyes are all fixed there. Is he trying to single out all the powerful people in the rule of law? Chapter 123, Training in Battle. Yi Fuxian naturally didn't want to choose all aspects of the far phase, but if he wanted to be in the top 3 of the list, he needed to show his absolute talent for the emperor to see. In fact, twin souls and 2 defeat lines should be handled accordingly. It was enough, but Yi Fuxian didn't want to have an accident. Therefore, he will miss another far phase, so there should be no tension. Since he was about to lose one more person, Yu Jiang naturally became his goal. Yu Jiang looked ugly, and saw Yi Fuxian with a smile standing in the void, looking at him. At the banquet last night, Bai Qiu asked Yi Fuxian to play the piano song and dance accompaniment. Yi Fuxian ignored him. He stood up and said a few words. Yi Fuxian took revenge. At that time, he believed that Yi Fuxian was only 7 stars of glory, qualified to be proud and pretentious in front of Bai Qiu, so he blamed it, but the strength that Yi Fuxian revealed in the previous 2 wars made Yu Jiang understand what he was. There is a qualification for pride. Bai Qiu does not want to play. What qualifications are there for him to play, but also need to spend an interpretive dance? Stepping out, Yu Zhang's eyes did not have too much confidence. Both Bai Qiu and Wang Yu were not necessarily weaker than him, but both were defeated. The difference is that Bai Qiu practices phonics and Wang Yu majors in martial arts, and he's the ultimate spell. Walking across from Yu Fuxian, Yu Jiang did not speak, life and soul in harmony, and the two blended together, released at the same time, and turned into a giant tree, shaking. Extending out, Yu Jiang's body stood in the middle of the tree. Yu Jiang was a wood attribute mage, single attribute, but as a destiny mage, practicing one attribute to the extreme was equally terrifying. A rustling sound came out, and the vines from the giant tree rolled towards Yu Fuxian in a panic, causing the aura between heaven and earth to release thousands of vine-lock spells together, and the vines covered the sky for a moment, and wanted to entangle Yu Fuxian. Because of the Solan law, Yu Jiang's wood-based spells are much more powerful than other wood-based magicians. Yu Fuxian's figure flashed back, and at the same time, a fire dragon appeared and roared at the vines ahead. Fire spells have a certain restraining effect on wooden spells. But restraint is also relative. The spells released by Yu Jiang were much stronger than Yu Fuxian's, and the vines directly flooded the dragons, and continuously rolled toward Yu Fuxian. He is also good at fire attributes and practices magic. Many people looked at Yu Fuxian for a while and thought about the words he said. Practicing piano music is just to cultivate the mind. Boom! A flame exploded from above Yu Fuxian's body, and an endless fire aura rushed into his body, and immediately Yu Fuxian was bathed in blazing fire, like the same furnace burning everything. Even the golden stick in his hand was surrounded by terrifying flames, and the two colors of gold and fire were extremely dazzling. Yu Fuxian naturally understands that it is impossible to rely on spells to fight against the strongest in the country of law. Although his spells are also powerful, they are much weaker than martial arts. He practiced Yu Qing's emperor practice to refine the body and gain emperor skills. His body and flesh and bones were extremely strong, and his physical strength was already extremely strong. Under the legal state it is enough to be swept away by the body, but after all, a strong person in the legal state condenses the legal state and crosses the territory. To beat opponents across borders. Although he is a destiny mage who has all attributes, the mage has very high talent, but because of practicing meditation, compared to martial arts, his spells are still weak. When the vine rolled up, its body spun, its wand danced, and a great mass gathered. The vine chased his body as if it could expand endlessly. Yu Fuxian ignored him, his body continued to rotate, and then he split a stick into the void, and a terrifying fire swept over, devouring the rolled vine, and there was a stick shadow coming in the distance. Facing the distance, Yu Jiang was attacked. Yu Jiang looked indifferent, and many vines stood in front of him, blocking the attack. But it was not a real attack at all. Yu Fuxian destroyed the second club in the void. He danced in the void, not like fighting, but more like practicing stick techniques. This person. Many people looked at Yu Fuxian. They saw Yu Fuxian gathered at a high altitude and dancing with a golden stick and two colored flames. They faintly realized that he was really honing his stick skills, training while fighting Yu Jiang, taking what happened to Yu Jiang. Yu Jiang also seemed to notice that his face was embarrassed, his body trembled, and went straight to Yu Fuxian. The giant trees make toys, and the wood attributes of heaven and earth are really hard. Behind Yu Jiang, there was a terrifying light release on the giant tree, and then it continued to expand outward, covering the sky like a sacred tree, and the giant vine that rolled towards Yu Fuxian's body like a swirling dragon. The wood spell, bound by the dragon, needs to be activated with a strong wood aura. Yu Fuxian continued to dance on the stick, as if he had not seen it. When the spell came, he threw down a third stick, and as it rolled onto his wooden ground, Kanglong instantly crushed it. Yu Jiang's face changed, and when he saw Yu Fuxian continue to dance the stick, his momentum was still rising. He knew it would be bad. Yu Fuxian had crushed Wang Yu with the fourth stick, but now he had gathered to detonate the fourth stick of clinging. As everyone thought, Yu Fuxian was indeed training. He had previously motivated the Emperor to unleash the fourth strike of the Tianxing 9 strikes. Now he wanted to try relying on his own strength. A strong will erupted. Yu Fuxian's heart was not limited at this moment, everything around him seemed to have nothing to do with him, and boundless potential gathered around his body. He only felt that his strength was extremely heavy, and the attack power of heaven and earth was extremely ruthless. But it was very difficult to control, he had to be pushed with a strong will, and his movements seemed to slow down. At this time, Kanglong's slavery came again, and there were endless sharp thorns, sinking wildly into Yu Fuxian's body. Boom! At this moment, Yu Fuxian's body exploded into a terrifying momentum. The next moment, his long staff swept downwards. Everyone saw that the dragon that had attacked him continued to explode and destroy. Burning the sky, Yu Fuxian's body descended with a long stick, like a firefighter. Everything was crushed wherever he went, until the long stick smashed everything in Yu Jiang's body, smashing Yu Jiang from the air on the Fenghua platform. Fenghua Tai is very quiet. They all saw a handsome figure in the void. They beat Lian Chan's 3 main phases. They were all good at phonics, martial arts, and magic. They had the talents of the spiritual, gold, wind, and fire systems, just like Yi. As Fu Qian thought, such talent was probably locked in one of the top 3 positions on the Fenghua list. His 7-star glory realm could rank among 15 people even based on his combat strength. Who can shake it except a few second-order figures? Yi Fuxian no longer looked at Yu Jiang, who fell to the ground, the violent breath disappeared, his body flickered, and he returned to the black wind carving. Many people looked at his figure, handsome, bright, always with a faint smile on his face, giving off a very comfortable feeling, but this is a handsome character who looks harmless to humans and animals, and previously destroyed the 3 far geniuses. He looked again at Hua Jiu who was standing beside him. At this moment, no one felt that something was wrong. They seemed the perfect couple. They were born with each other, with unique talents and unique appearances. When they stood together at that moment, Lin Yueya, the first beauty of the Kangai kingdom, and the arrogance of various families seemed to have lost color. What's more, there was an evil figure who stood for the rest of his life who was both talented and perverted. Many people think, what combination is this? After the shock, the battle continued, and the strong people in the field of law began to collide. Yi Wangchen, the viceroy, and Zhao Qianfen, the Kangai Academy, were invincible. Nothing can shake them. If there is no accident, the two should be able to. They are the two strongest people in the Fenghua banquet. Apart from them, there was also a talented person who was not the king of Kangai King City. Bai Qiu and Yu Jiang continued to fight after losing to Yi Fuxian, but their faces had lost their previous arrogance, and they were taught by people from 7-star glory realm where they could be proud, but in reality they were not weak. Multiple battles have defeated opponents in the same environment. This made everyone understand that it was not because they were weak, but because Yi Fuxian was too evil, and it was still useless to change the people of the first-level realm to deal with him. In this case, Bai Qiu and Yu Jiang can still make a list. The worst was Wang Yu. He was immediately hit by criticism and lost his combat power. After that, he had no chance to appear. Tianzi wanted to name him. No reason. The realm of glory ~~ Lin Yueyao and Hua Jixin fought. These two beauties have a unique style. With the royal advantage, Lin Yueyao defeated Hua Jixin. When it comes to talent, it is definitely not weaker than Lin Yueyao. After the two of them fought, no one challenged Yi Fuxian, the rest of his life, and Huajiayu in the world of glory. Who will fight? It's better to be a man in the field of warfare. This made the two genius women quite depressed. In today's Fenghua platform, the most dazzling person is Huajiayu. She took all the light belonging to Lin Yueyao. The rest of his life also fought and challenged characters in the French realm, but he did not win. The reason is simple. The powerful French realm can fly in the air. He could only be beaten all the time, making the rest of his life very unhappy. He was not defeated, but he left Fenghuatai in depression. Although he didn't win, no one dared to hate his lifelong talent. This person also has the power to shake the strong in the country of law. If he can defend the sky, he may have a chance to beat the law. As the battle continued, the Fenghua banquet was gradually nearing its end. In this Fenghua banquet, perhaps no one expected that 3 people from the 7-star glory realm would be born in the sky, revealing the glorious glory. Chapter 124, Emperor Roll Call. On the Fenghua platform, fewer and fewer people are entering the battlefield, and it is a little quiet at this time. At this time, there may be the strongest people, and there are no winners. Xiao Wangai Yi Wuchen, Kangai Zhao Qianfen Academy, and Li Yan. Li Yi is a dark horse except for the 3 Yi Fuxian. No one knew him before. He wasn't a person from the King's City. Among the many arrogant people who came to the banquet from Kangai City, if Yi Fuxian and the 3 of them were not counted, Li Yan was the most dazzling. His soul is the 3-legged Jinwu of the sun bird. He has the attributes of wind and fire. He has strange martial arts and martial arts skills. The flames on his body at the time of the attack seemed to be more than the flames of heaven and earth aura. The fire was even more terrifying. At this time, Li Ying's figure came out, staring at Lin Wuchen. On the Fenghua platform, Lin Wuchen is too dazzling, but he wants to give it a try. Lin Wuchen's body fell on the Fenghua platform in an instant. His appearance was as calm as ever, and his body stood like a sword, especially when he was about to fight. This temperament is very clear, as if around his body, or lingering around the sword. Li Yan also used the image of life and soul to condense into a huge golden black bird, and the flame burned everything, which was stronger than Wang Yu's previous flame. Have you not given up the far phase yet? Li Min said. Not. Lin Wuchen remained calm, his tone full of confidence. A golden black bird statue appeared, and flames soared into Lin Wuchen's body. For a moment, Lin Wuchen's body seemed to be buried by the flames, but he still stood there, and a storm of sword gases blew around him. The sound of crickets came out, and the golden shadow of the black bird was continuously smashed by the sword. This is a powerful sword. Everyone just felt a tremor, and the sword around Lin Wuchen's body turned into a real sword, which surrounded the body. This sword is simply amazing. Before the Fenghua party, Lin Wuchen was actually the person with the highest voice in the Fenghua party, none of them, because everyone thought he was the strongest. And Lin Wuchen did not disappoint. Li Zun's body flickered, and he walked towards Lin Wuchen. Lin Wuchen took one step forward, only one step. The sword was full of the sky, the surrounding endless sword seemed to condense, and then turned into a sword. He is the sword. Li Huan stopped and saw Lin Wuchen's figure, not like the man in front of him, but a sword. With the fire extinguished, Li Yan flashed and flew into the void. I lose. Li Ji's voice came out, and everyone felt a little inexplicable. Since Li Ji knew that Lin Wuchen was strong, he was still challenging, but why didn't he actually start the war? But he gave up. They were confused, but to Li Yi, when Lin Wuchen took that step, he knew that he had lost, and the other party's state that he had not yet reached was not a cultivation state. Lin Wuchen retracted his steps, blinked, and returned to the void. Many people saw Qian Qianfen leave. Now, the only thing that can threaten Lin Wuchen is Zhao Qianfen, but Zhao Qianfen does not intend to fight. Maybe he wasn't so confident. Of course, as long as he doesn't fight, then whoever is strong and who is weak is unknown. Lin Wuchen did not challenge his mind, as if his temperament was like that, nor did he believe that in this feast of brilliance, there is nothing that he cannot overcome, and he does not need to challenge. Feng Huatai became silent again, and it seemed that no one was continuing to fight. A few elders of Kangai Academy went to Feng Huatai and said, "Is there anyone else? If there is no one, that's all for now." Seeing that no one was speaking, the Kangai Academy elder looked at Yi Tianzi. Yi Tianzi nodded slightly, and the Kangai Academy disciples were left behind, and then left. There are many young figures seeking the void, 10 of them will be named by the Emperor and Dazzle. Many are guessing, what will happen to a certain rank. Go up, Yi Tianzi said with a smile, and they all went to Feng Huatai. Yi Fuxian's 3 figures also fell on Feng Huatai. Only one was miserable and carried by someone, Wang Yu. The miserable Wang Yu glanced at Yi Fuxian coldly. He didn't want to come. Feng Hubang has no chance with him, but this is the rule of Feng Guaban. His father ordered everyone to pick him up. Yi Fuxian did not go to see Wang Yu. When he was a child for Lin Yueya, he was very prestigious. At that time, he was afraid that he would not have such consequences. 15 people all appeared on the Fenghua platform. Lin Wuchen's expression was as calm as ever, as if he didn't care about anything. Zhao Qianfen was smiling and personable. Lin Yueya's eyes flowed, and she occasionally fell on Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiu, with a complicated expression. He never thought before that his light would be taken by another woman. Both Yu Jiang and Bai Qiu seemed to have lost their pride, just because another figure, Yi Fuxian, stood on the Fenghua platform. Even though they appeared amazingly behind, everyone remembered that it was probably just a battle with Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian was too bright, and they were reduced to foil. Slowly, they raised their eyes and looked at the throne above the sky. When they saw Tianzi with a smile on his face, they looked at them, and then said, 10th place on the Fenghua list, Lin Yueya. This sound alone made many people tremble inside. Lin Yueya, the first beauty of the Kangai kingdom, was extremely talented. Before the Fenghua banquet was held, he was already a very famous person, and his voice was very high. Today, he is indeed on the list, but he is only at the bottom. To many, Bang Fenghua was invisible, but to Lin Yueya, this position was nothing to be proud of. However, he lost 2 battles, one because of Hua Jiu, and the other was slightly better than conscience. No one can say anything, it makes sense. Fenghua's list is the 9th, Yu Jiang. Tianzi continued to announce that Kangai Academy Tianzhao's figure, 9th, although he lost to Yi Fuxian, but after that he performed well and placed in 9th place, should be. Fenghua's list is the 8th, Bai Qiu. The emperor said again, many people also guessed that Yu Jiang and Bai Qiu both lost to Yi Fuxian, and Wang Yu. The 3 major Fa Xiangtians lost by 1, but it turned out that Yu Jiang and Bai Qiu were not weaker than other genius Faxiangs. It can only be said that Yi Fuxian is too evil. In this way, Yi Fuxian might be in the top 3 on the list. The 7-star noble person who is in the top 3 of the Fenghua list is definitely a miracle. Fenghua list is the 7th, and painting is convincing. Another stunning woman caught his heart and came in 7th. Jixin's own painting was a little surprised. Maimo glanced at Tianzi. He only fought once with Feng Huatai. It was a fight with Lin Yueya, and the fight was defeated. He placed 7th. Not only was there a few accidents in painting Jixin, everyone around was a little surprised, but in fact they also understood that painting Jixin can fight Lin Yueya in such a way based on the 8-star glory, but it can't be said that he was defeated. Environment, there is a high probability of winning. Lin Yueya's eyes are also stupid. He fought 2 matches, one loss to Hua Jiu, and 1 victory over the conscience of the painting. However, Tianzi named him at the end of the list, and painting the conscience was 7th. Fenghua's list is 6th, Li Yi. Tianzi continued to speak. Li Yuan, a powerful figure in the field of law, entered the 6th position on the Fenghua list. The last 5 of them, Yi Fuxian and the 3 of them, all entered the top 5. In addition, there was Yi Wuchen and Zhao Qianfen. Neither of them lost. In fact, for the rest of his life, like Hua Jixin, he only fought once and was defeated. But what about it? Who will fight all my life? A genius in the rule of law, and that can't be considered a defeat. He left without being able to fight each other. As for the Jixin and Lin Yueyao paintings, he looked disgusted to fight with them, but this matter seemed to everyone as if it was like no one was surprised by what was taken for granted. Moreover, there was another man who had only lost one battle and was actually very strong. He was Wang Yu, but Wang Yu was different from everyone. The only battle he fought was against Yu Fuxian in the Seven Stars Glory World. He was not a person in the same world as him, not even a cross-border fight. Everyone who saw was finally crushed and crushed. There was no chance to prove himself like by Qiu and Yu Jiang, but he could only consider himself unlucky. The Fenghua list is destined not to have its name. Furthermore, it is the top 5 of the Fenghua list, and everyone is looking forward to it. Yi Tianzi looked at the people on the Fenghua platform, and everyone was nervous. The next rank was difficult to choose. Zhao Qianfen, Hua Jiyu, and the rest of his life, who is the 5th rank. Zhao Qianfen had never experienced defeat. The revealed power is invincible like Yi Wuchen, and they must be the strongest. Some people wondered if Zhao Qianfen ended up going against Yu Yechen in the end. Was it intentional? Avoid. Hua Jiyu, he only played one battle, but defeated Lin Yueyao, crossed 2 realms. For the rest of his life, whoever placed him in 5th position seemed controversial. Do you have anything to say? Yi Tianzi asked with a smile. Everyone's look flickered. Then Zhao Qianfen smiled and said, Your Majesty, although I haven't fought Yi Wuchen, I think it is more likely to be defeated. With Yi brothers' unique style, it belongs to first. For me, let Your Majesty consider me a defeat. Many people glanced at Zhao Qianfen in amazement. He seemed very indifferent to the rankings, but he let many people admire his attitude, voluntarily admitted that he would lose, and recommended Yi Wuchen first. But for the rest of his life, Zhao Qianfen glanced coldly. In his opinion, the first one is Yu Fuxian. What qualifications does Zhao Qianfen have? Influence the emperor's decisions. Although the rest of his life also knows that Yu Fuxian himself may not care much, he did not take any action after defeating the 3 Fa laws, because his goals were only the first 3. He participated in the Fenghua list with a very clear purpose, only to harm the teacher. The first and third didn't really matter to him. But for the rest of his life, he cared little. Zhao Qianfen was from Kangai Academy, and Yu Fuxian humiliated Yu Jiang from Kangai Academy. Chapter 125. Good. Although the rest of his life is short-tempered, he is definitely not stupid. On the contrary, he is very smart in many aspects. Zhao Qianfen's words seem to have a sense of grandeur but also hidden secrets. He did it on purpose. Although the first 3 are very noble and can offer conditions for Tianzi, there is still a gap between the former and the latter. In many cases, people often only remember the former. Moreover, if Yi Wuchen was the first, it would mean that he was ranked by strength, so the second, in fact, was logical. I only fought one battle, and I was defeated, so I can place him in 5th place. At this time, the rest of his life looked at Tianzi, and said, Zhao Qianfen and Yi Wuchen are both in the second-order realm. Although Zhao Qianfen had no defeats, he had yet to fight Yi Wuchen. He also considered himself inferior. He hasn't really proven himself and can rank 4th. Zhao Qianfen and Yu Jiang both stared at the words of the rest of their lives, especially Zhao Qianfen, with sharp eyes hidden in his eyes. The rest of his life showed directly that Zhao Qianfen did not prove himself. That makes sense. Tianzi smiled and nodded. Although you only fought one battle, you fought against the rule of law, otherwise you will be swept away by the law. As for Zhao Qianfen, his strength is extraordinary and he is quite graceful. It is indeed a person cultivated by Kangai Academy. Yi Tianzi laughed. Zhao Qianfen is ranked 5th, Zhao Qianfen. Zhao Qianfen heard the smile in the first half of Yi Tianzi's sentence, and then the smile froze there again. Of course, it was only for a moment that he recovered as usual. Many people in Fenghuatai looked there. For the rest of their lives, Zhao Qianfen and Tianzi, the dialogue seems to be quite meaningful. In the end, Yi Tianzi actually put Zhao Qianfen in 5th place. Kangai Academy is the most famous training ground in Wangcheng. Although 2 people are on the list, not one is in the top 3. Hua Jiyu, the 4th. Without thinking, Yi Tianzi continued to announce that Hua Jiyu was placed in 4th place instead of the rest of his life. For the rest of his life, he asked to be placed in 5th place, but Tianzi let him into the top 3. He only fought once and was defeated, but he made it into the top 3, which seems a bit unreasonable, but it seems reasonable. The Fenghua list is not only about victory and defeat and the effectiveness of the battle, but also a comprehensive consideration. Tianzi considered that there was a natural potential in it. For example, even though Hua Jiayu defeated Lin Yueyao, there was no tension for the rest of his life. Hua Jiyu also fought against Wang Yu, and he couldn't keep up with the rest of his life. Therefore, the rest of his life was before Hua Ji. The rest of his life was also slightly shocked, and he looked at Tianzi in surprise. Yi Tianzi seemed to feel his gaze and smiled. The rest of my life, the third. Hearing that he was ranked third in his remaining life, many people looked at Tianzi with a hint of admiration. Ranking from 3rd to 10th on this list is simple, but not easy. Yi Wuchen is the strongest person in Feng Huaiyan, and Yi Fuxian is the most terrible person across the border. They must occupy the first two. Furthermore, it depends on who takes first place. At this moment, countless eyes stared intently at Yi Tianzi, waiting for his answer. Yi Tianzi looked at the last two figures and smiled. What do you think? Yi Wuchen's eyes fell on Yi Fuxian's body, and he said, my second-order realm, your 7-star glory, I didn't challenge you before, and fooled you too much. However, since His Majesty asked me, I want to see the stick method that you used before. I only defended, not attacked. How about it? The 9 strokes in the sky were too beautiful, but before he actively challenged Yi Fuxian in his realm, it was too bluffing. Yi Fuxian looked at Yi Wuchen in amazement, then nodded, okay. The two said, heading towards the center of Fenghuatai, facing each other. Yi Wuchen stood there, dazzling with swords all over his body, like a sword. A long stick appeared in Yi Fuxian's hand. Yi Fuxian stepped forward, and invisible potential erupted in an instant. Is another, more powerful move. Yi Fuxian walked towards Yi Wuchen step by step, and with each step, the momentum would rise until he felt a terrifying storm around his body. Yi Wuchen still stood there quietly. No matter how concentrated Yi Fuxian was, he looked indifferent. When the momentum rose to the extreme, Yi Fuxian's wings appeared, his body rotated, like a bolt of lightning, and the golden mace slashed out, passing through the terrifying stream of light in the void. At this time, Yi Wuchen took a small step forward, only one step. The extremely terrifying sword rushed to the smashing golden long stick, and made a loud sound. The long stick was unable to split then. Back to the earthquake, Yi Fuxian spun around in void with the help of earthquake forces. Yi Wuchen stretched out his hand and pointed his finger towards the void. The sword means Lingtian, killing to the sky. Yi Fuxian felt like an invisible sword storm, and charged straight at the stick. Can't move forward. His body turned again. After a while, Tianxing 9 strikes fell for the third time. Yi Wuchen looked up and looked into the void. Around his body, it was as if thousands of swords were rising against the trend, all bursting towards Yi Fuxian. The next long stick was left and the third hit was still blocked. Once again rejected, Yi Fuxian stood proudly in the void, and the majestic surroundings flowed wildly. His eyes are very sharp. Looking at Yi Wuchen below, he couldn't help but produce a powerful and peerless war will. Yi Wuchen's strength was much stronger than Wang Yu, Bai Qiu, etc. This is not a hierarchy at all. The stick dance, many stick figures appeared in the sky, the Lingtian wall rushed downwards, and a burst of sound came out. Yi Fuxian took the trend forward and shot a fourth shot into the sky. Shadow integration. The sword swept, but under the stick, everything was broken. Yu Yukik looked at the scene with very sharp eyes. He stepped on it and soared into the sky. His body seemed to turn into a sword. The endless swords around him seemed to be integrated with him, facing the long stick that came from the explosion. Finally, the long stick fell. Yi Wuchen's fingers hit the long stick in the void, and in an instant, endless swords merged into this finger, and a terrifying giant sword appeared and banged on the golden long stick. Above this moment, the sticks and swords shattered into nothingness. Yi Fuxian stood in the void, looked at Yi Wuchen's figure, smiled, and said, great. He doesn't really care about winning and losing. The second Wuchen order is the most evil genius himself. Even in the same realm, Bai Qiu and the others couldn't compare to him. Nature like that is hard to bridge. Yi Wuchen nodded, then walked back to his place, and Yi Fuxian returned to the rest of his life in Huo Xiaoyu. The end of this war was not very unexpected, and the realm was too vast. Yi Tianzi looked at the two, then his eyes fell on Yi Wuchen and said, no dust, if I put you first, what do you think? Everyone's heart trembled, and Fenghua was ranked first. Yi Wuchen, who was invincible at the Fenghua banquet, did have such qualifications. Yi Wuchen looked at Yi Tianzi and slowly opened his eyes under everyone's gaze. Yi Fuxian is more qualified than me. Yi Wuchen's words took everyone by surprise and looked at him in astonishment. However, Yi Tianzi smiled, as if Yi Wuchen's answer made him quite satisfied. His eyes fell on Yi Wuchen's body, and he smiled and said, then, as you said, Feng Hubang is ranked second, Yi Wuchen. As soon as this word came out, many people's hearts trembled, and some people were shocked by Tianzi's decision. Previously, Tianzi asked Yi Wuchen how to place it first. Everyone thought that the top spot in the Fenghua ranking would belong to Yi Wuchen. But at this moment, countless eyes fell on the Fenghua platform, looking at the handsome figure in the middle of Huo Jiu and the rest of his life. They all understood that Yi Fuxian's name would be famous today from the Kangai country. Beside Yi Tianzi, Yi Lingxi smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. His talent would eventually receive a befitting glory, and he would be doomed to be defeated by 3 consecutive Falun Dafa players. Number 1 on the Fenghua list, Yi Fuxian, Yi Tianzi said with a smile. The void was silent, the needles sounded, and countless lights converged on one person. Kangai Academy disciples Zhao Qianfan and Yu Jiang froze, Yi Fuxian, first. Zhao Qianfan was placed fifth by the emperor. By Qiu and Wang Yu looked at Yi Fuxian coldly. The painting knows a smile and is happy for Yi Fuxian. Lin Yueyao looked complicated. Hua Zaiyu Meizu smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. The young man was forced to leave the Nandu kingdom, and with anger and hatred, he went to another country and came to Kangai country, but did not want to bloom in Kangai country. He is such a person, no matter where he is, he must be as dazzling as the stars, and no one can hide his glory. For the rest of his life, he smirked and smiled slightly, unlike the genius who fought ruthlessly, as if he himself won first place. He wouldn't be so happy to win first place himself. In the distance, Qin Mo, Nan Duyan, Tang Lan, Tang Wan, and Yi Qingshuan's eyes were all fixed on Yi Fuxian, and in their eyes, a bright smile blossomed. The young man was already dazzling enough in Donghai City, but Luo Tianzi's intentions were like lightning on a clear day, which decided the youth's ascension to the south. Fortunately, the emperor of the Kangai kingdom did not disappoint his talent, and he deserved such glory. Fenghua party, the Kangai kingdom gathered from the country, and Yi Fuxian, the first. Yi Tianzi looked at the rest of his life with a smile, and asked, for the rest of your life, do you want to make a request? Think about it. For the rest of his life, he looked at Yi Tianzi, scratched his head, and really didn't expect that. He never thought he was in the top 3. Your Majesty, you are good, I will not mention the conditions. The rest of his life smiled thickly. To him, Yi Fuxian's glory was more important than anything else. He looked at Yi Tianzi's eyes more pleasantly. Everyone was stunned by the words from the rest of their lives. Are you okay? Even Yi Tianzi froze, and then smiled freely, looking at the rest of his life. Well, no one judged me that way, I will write this down. Chapter 126, Book. The princes and nobles beside Yi Tianzi also laughed. It seems His Majesty really cherishes the rest of his life, but a man who looks like a humanoid monster during the battle will be very kind, which is a bit surprising. Such a rare opportunity, how many people dream, before jokingly saying that if you want to be a horse, there is a chance. He gave up the rest of his life. You idiot, Yi Fuxian whispered, but with a smile on his face. He looked towards Yi Tianzi and said, for the rest of my life, Your Majesty is your goddess. What identity is there? No joke, you have to get to the top 3 regarding conditions. Isn't His Majesty shameless? Yi Fuxian's voice came out, and others were stunned, looking at Yi Fuxian with a stunned look. I saw a handsome figure standing there quietly, looking at Tianzi. His eyes were clear and honest, as if he really thought about Tianzi's face. Even Yi Tianzi was stunned, his eyes lit up, as if it made sense. That's right. For the rest of your life, if you don't mention the condition, I will lose face. Think again. Tianzi smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian and Yu Sheng Road, really 2 cute little guys. For the rest of my life, I looked at Yi Tianzi, and then looked at Yi Fuxian. Hua Jiu pouted and chuckled, she was still used. No dust, you talk about your terms first. Yi Tianzi fell onto Yi Wuchen's body and smiled. Your Majesty, I wish to enter the palace library. Yi Wuchen looked at Tianzi. Yi Tianzi's eyes lit up and he smiled and said, you will ask, okay, I promise. Thank you, Your Majesty, Yi Wuchen said. Yi Tianzi finally looked at Yi Fuxian and asked, Yi Fuxian, how about you? Your Majesty, I wish to heal my teacher's wounds. Yi Fuxian said, looking forward with anticipation in his eyes. He attended the Fenghua banquet for this matter. Many people are a little surprised. Yi Fuxian is very talented. Who is the teacher? Besides, he looked hurt and asked Tianzi to heal him. Where is your teacher, and what hurts? Tianzi asked. Yi Fuxian looked back at the crowd and shouted, Master. His words fell, and they saw Nan Duyin and Tang Lan step out of the crowd. The two helped Hua Fengli walk in the void and came to Fenghua Terrace. Many of the 3 who saw this looked extraordinary, not to mention their talent. Yi Fuxian is too devilish, right? The beauty of Yi Fuxian and Hua Zaiyu is naturally needless to say. The 3 people who appeared today can be described as jade-like masters, and the jade tree is in the wind. Nandu Wen beside him was elegant and noble. Queen, Tang Lan also looks very good. Mother-father. Wajiayu stepped forward, and everyone immediately understood the relationship between them, wondering that Wajiayu could have such a face. I looked at Yi Fuxian again. It turned out that this person deceived the teacher's daughter. At the same time, they also vaguely guessed the reason why Yi Fuxian's participation in the Fenghua banquet was dazzling. In fact, he came to the Fenghua banquet for his master. My master's soul used to be wiped out. Later, he forced his soul to fight, which caused great trauma to the spirit. Yi Fuxian said, I heard that a spiritual healer needs to be healed to heal my teacher's wounds. Please, Your Highness. Can you release your soul? Tianzi asked, looking at Hua Fengliu. Hua Fengliu nodded slightly, and then a light shone, as if life and soul appeared, but people did not see his life and soul, but only saw some fragmented parts, such as pieces of a piano. Many people think of Yi Fuxian's voice magic career, immediately suspect that Hua Fengliu is a violinist. Yi Tianzi naturally glanced, then nodded. It doesn't matter, the wound can be healed. Although Yi Fuxian had already thought about the ending, he actually heard Tianzi himself say, his face still showed a bright smile, and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty. Didn't you say that Jun Wu didn't make jokes, because you promised you can do it naturally?" Jian Zian said with a smile. Yi Fuxian saw Jian Zi's eyes trembled with a smile. He carefully considered how to hide Jian Zi. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Hua Jiu also thanked him. Can father's wound finally heal? Nan Duan and Tang Lan both smiled at Hua Fengliu, and then looked at Yi Fuxian with some relief. Although Hua Fengliu is very calm, but there is a burst of warmth in his heart. Although this disciple is a bit shameless, he still likes him. Who made Yi Fuxian like him? All your life, have you thought about it? Tianzi asked the rest of his life again. The rest of his eyes fell on Yi Fuxian, and he said, "I want to find a teacher." Yi Fuxian immediately understood the meaning of the rest of his life. When he thought of Yi Xiang, there were some memories in his eyes. The old fox would definitely not be in trouble. "Let me do it," Yi Fuxian said. Judging from Tianzi's actions today, even if he said his identity, there would be no problem. After all, the two countries are already enemy countries. The rest of his life nodded. Yi Fuxian looked at Tianzi and said, "I will first apologize to His Majesty." Yi Tianzi looked at him doubtfully, and forgave him again. These people seem to have a secret. But it doesn't matter, I don't blame him. Tianzi said. "We are not people from the Kangai kingdom," Yi Fuxian said. As soon as he said this, the room was silent. Many people were laughing and closing their eyes instantly, staring at them. At the Fenghua banquet, Yi Fuxian, the rest of his life, and Huajiayu displayed a unique style. Now they are saying that they are not from the Kangai kingdom. In the 3 junior high schools, they got 2 seats, which was a shame for Kang Yeguo's genius. Yi Tianzi's gaze changed slightly, but he returned to normal as soon as he was very talented, and people who were not from the Kangai kingdom came to the Fenghua party and had their own secret feelings. "Continue," Yi Tianzi said. "We are from Nandu Kingdom, Donghai City, the capital of Donghai Prefecture." Yi Fuxian continued to speak, and the space around him was in an uproar. Nandu was the enemy country of Kangai country, and people from the enemy country came to the Fenghua party of their Kangai country to release that dazzling light. I used to train at Donghai Zugong Palace in Donghai Prefecture, but on the last day of the divine calendar, Luo Tianzi suddenly ordered us to be killed. An older bodyguard, let's escape safely until we arrive in Kangai country. Yi Fuxian continued. Yi Tianzi nodded slightly, his eyes stared at Hua Jiu, and he smiled and said, "No wonder I see his soul is a bit familiar, he should be extraordinary. My sister-in-law came from the Nandu family, which used to be the royal family of the Nandu kingdom, but the Nandu family was also ordered to kill us." Yi Fuxian saw Yi Tianzi guess and did not hide that such a big thing happened in Donghai Prefecture. If Yi Tianzi is interested in investigating, it is very easy to find. It is better to be honest. The old royal family seems to be the princess of the past. Yi Tianzi smiled and continued to ask, "What does this have to do with the conditions mentioned for the rest of my life?" "The teacher of the rest of my life is also my elder. The former leader of Tokai Zugong Palace's Wukuang Palace, Yi Xiang, in order to protect the people who went and fought with us, the rest of his life will have to worry about the situation. His request is hope. His Majesty can find his teacher for him," Yi Fuxian said. Yi Tianzi's eyes fell on the rest of his life, and he saw that he nodded. In the distance, Yi Qingshuan's eyes became reddish. Lately, he was worried about his father and hoped that Yi Tianzi would agree. Many eyes were on Yi Tianzi, including Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life, who were looking at him. Even though they were people from Nandu country, they were being hunted by Nandu country. In this case, Yi Tianzi should not blame them. Press Yi Fuxian judged that Yi Tianzi should agree. But Yi Tianzi did not nod, he is still a little hesitant. I saw Yi Tianzi's eyes staring at the lion in front of him, the genius of the Nandu kingdom, the descendant of the old royal family, and why did the son of the Nandu kingdom kill some young characters? If Tianzi can deal with a few teenagers, he may be able to guess a few, unless he thinks Yi Fuxian and them are threatening the royal family. For practitioners, the kingdom can't hold them back. Even though you are from the Nandu kingdom, now that you have come to my Kangai kingdom, you belong to my Kangai kingdom. Yi Tianzi slowly opened his mouth and smiled. Nandu country can't tolerate you, it is their loss. Hearing Tianzi's words, Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life were relieved. Yi Tianzi looked at Yi Fuxian again, and laughed. You and the rest of your life are not difficult. I promise. In addition, the 3 of you are in the top 5 list. When there is a prize, you and the rest of life have made a wish. I will put it on the language. Waji together after she becomes the old royal family of the Nandu kingdom, she will become a princess, and she will fall into the Kangai country. In that case, I have written Waji language as a princess with a surname. How about it? From Yi Tianzi's perspective, it is natural to see that this passerby is centered on Yi Fuxian. Waji is his girlfriend, and the rest of his life seems to really listen to him. Even his teacher and brother-in-law seems to believe him so he asked Yi Fuxian. The people around him were shocked, and Tianzi wanted to seal Hua Jiu as a princess. The emperor said that it was natural to honor Yi Fuxian's 3 gifts to Hua Jiu, the first, third, fourth, and 3 gifts from the Fenghua list. After a while, many people woke up from the shock, and immediately understood Tianzi's intentions, looked at Tianzi with admiration, and those who were chased by Nandu Guoxianzi, but Kangai Guoxianzi highly praised and even sealed them as a princess. Covering people's hearts, while also emphasizing the emperor's temperament, I am afraid that it will be a good story. Yi Fuxian naturally understood Tianzi's intentions. Yi Tianzi not only ignored her identity as a warrior, but she could become a princess. Although this may be just a title, it symbolizes Tianzi's attitude, and he needs to look at his attitude. Your Majesty, Yi Fuxian said without hesitation. Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts trembled. Today's party was completely unexpected. Hua Jiu was locked up as a princess with a surname. Chapter 127, National Division. Hua Jiu herself hasn't returned to God yet. Why has she somehow become a princess of the Kangai kingdom? Behind the scenes Hua Fengliu and Nan Dao Yin were also smiling. Then, in the Kangai kingdom, they could be considered a firm foothold. Some of their worries can be solved together. I saw many people from the aristocracy standing up and smiling at Hua Jiu. I have seen Jiu's daughter. Although the princess named Hua Ji is not the same as the real princess, the emperor's intentions can be seen from her. In the future, Yi Fuxian's 3 men will definitely have an extraordinary position in the Kangai kingdom. They will naturally give the face of the emperor. In addition, Yi Tianzi's interpretation of charming flowers is the most reasonable. Capturing him was equivalent to captivating Yi Fuxian in disguise. The man the princess likes is naturally the horse of the future. How should Xu address His Majesty? Yi Fuxian looked at Tianzi. It's just a title, it doesn't matter, just feel free. For the future, he adapts to this status and is willing to call me a true father. Yi Tianzi smiled. Hua Jiu looked at Yi Fuxian and then looked at his parents. Naturally, he wasn't someone who didn't know how to be polite. Yi Tianzi treated him like this and promised to cure his father. Looking at Yi Tianzi, Hua Jiu said slightly, Jiu has seen his true father. Yi Tianzi's eyes flashed a smile, loudly said, I am a lush country party, the pride of the heavens shines, the interpretation talent is extraordinary, the appearance is incomparable, and I am very happy to be a virtuous princess. Congratulations to your father, the prince and princess congratulated. Congratulations, Your Majesty. The aristocratic Wang Gong once again congratulated, stood there and arched to meet Tianzi, and several strong people around Fenghuatai glanced at Lin Yueya, Kangai's first beauty in Fenghuatai. Yi Tianzi claims that the Hua Ji language has an incomparable appearance, which is self-evident. Hua Ji language is more prominent than Lin Yueya. Now has been crowned a princess by Tianzi and praised in public. In the future, the title of the first beauty in the Kangai kingdom I am afraid that it will change hands. Xu, for the time being I have nothing to offer you, but your father's injury, I will personally ask the master to take a shot. Yi Tianzi said with a smile, many people looked enviously at the flowers, and can have such disciples and daughters, proud of it. Xu thanks his godly father. Hua Jiu also had a bright smile on her face. The Kangai kingdom master must be a very strong character. The word, please, is used by the heavenly sun. The rewards of the rest are all in my Kangai royal collection. According to your ranking, you can choose treasures, training, and combat skills. Now, let me go to the palace with me. Yi Tianzi stood up, facing the crowd. Fenghua party, this is the end. The words fell, and Tianzi turned around, and pulled the queen into the carriage, and the prince and princess accompanied him. Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiu looked at each other with a smile. Kang Yigafeng Yuan finally had a very happy ending, and it was a worthwhile journey. Teacher, let's go to the palace, Yi Fuxian said to Hua Feng. Go. Nandu Wenyan took a deep breath. I don't know if there is a chance to refine even a life soul. Life is broken, how could it not be that easy? Hua Fengliu didn't have much hope. She could heal her wounds didn't have to be in vain, she was already satisfied. A large group followed the emperor into the palace. Around Fenghuatai, countless figures still stood there, and did not leave. Feng Huai's Kang Yeguo arrived in the country, but did not expect that the most dazzling people were the 3 talented characters of the Nandu country. Their group didn't seem to stand out much, but they were extremely evil. Feng Huan, Yi Fuxian won the Fenghua list, Hua Jiu was captured by the daughter of the clan, and the rest of his life was rewarded by His Majesty. The three of them will fly into the sky. In addition, everyone also saw how strong Lin Wuchen was, and the invincible presence in the Fenghua banquet. Just before the Fenghua banquet was held, Lin Yueya, the most beautiful woman in the Kangai kingdom, had a slightly dim light, completely covered by Hua Jiu, and had just reached the bottom of the Fenghua list, which was not even convincing. Seeing the figure in front gradually disappearing, the people then dispersed, and then the news quickly spread throughout Kangai city. In the royal palace, the shuttle car went all the way. At this time, a guard next to the shuttle car came to Yi Fuxian and said, "Your Majesty has a request." Yi Fuxian nodded, and then headed for the car. Lin Yueya, Bai Qiu, Zhao Qianfen, and the others looked at Yi Fuxian's back. They look different and have different ideas in their hearts. Yi Fuxian came to the car and said to the emperor sitting in the car, "Your Majesty, how many things did you not take the initiative to explain? You are so talented, why did the Luo family make your clan die?" Yi Tianzi asked. "Your Majesty, this matter may have something to do with the number of lives counted by Nandu Guo's left side," Yi Fuxian said. "I know that Nan Zuoguo's left phase is an astrologer, so let's listen," Yi Tianzi asked. "I happen to be the same as Zhao by chance. He may have measured my life and gave me orders. Coincidentally, Zhao Xiang calculated another life for the interpreter, so this incident raised the prince's warning. He went to Donghai Zugong to see me. On the one hand, let me follow him, and I will be able to follow him. I refused. Then, Luo Tianzi sent me a will, which captivated me to read for the prince, and the writing for the princess, so I had to run away. Hidden, you can know all about it by going to Donghai City." Yi Tianzi showed sharp eyes, and he could tell many things once he calculated what Yi Fuxian said. Luo Tianzi gave such a goal, obviously, to find an excuse to force Yi Fuxian and Hua Jiu. "It seems that your language of reconciliation has the number of emperors and queens." Luo Tianzi smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. "But I never thought of becoming an emperor before, and I will not ascend the throne of the Nandu kingdom at all." Yi Fuxian said. "He didn't say he was an empire. I haven't thought about it before, but after this happened, this possibility exists. Perhaps, this is the so-called live number." Yi Tianzi said with a smile. Yi Fuxian did not say anything, and now he is not going to become a country. Son of God, he is not here, but the family of King Nandu, he must die, no matter what. The Luo royal family made up an excuse to kill you. Can you escape? Yi Tianzi was a little curious. If he gave such an order, Yi Fuxian would never have a chance to survive. 9 died and 1 lived. Yi Fuxian said, "My teacher escaped Qian's death to protect us, and senior teacher Yi Xiang, who was there for the rest of his life, disappeared. He didn't say that even if he paid a huge price, he wouldn't be able to leave Donghai City alive without the emperor's will in his body. He didn't know that even if he had the will of the emperor, he could barely leave Donghai City. Your teacher deserves respect, and Yi Xiang, I will order someone to ask, but since he escaped, he must think of a way to cover people's eyes and eyes. It is not easy to find, unless you can tell him that you are here." Yi Tianzi Tao, Yi Fuxian nodded, and he understood the truth. "The people leave, the queen and her team come back first." Yi Tianzi asked Yi Wuchen and the others to go to the palace library. He took Yi Fuxian and they went to another place in the palace, accompanied by Princess Yi Lingxi. There is a mountain deep within the palace. This mountain is very quiet. The ancient tree courtyard is pure and indifferent. Yi Tianzi personally took Yi Fuxian and they went up the mountain. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he saw an old man coming out to meet him. The old man had white hair and a white beard, and bones were like a fairy, but his eyes were closed, even when Tianzi arrived. On the way up the mountain, Yi Lingxi told Yi Fuxian that they couldn't see his eyes. "I fall." Although the teacher was blind, he seemed to know who was there, facing the direction of Tianzi. "A few days have not come to disturb the teacher." Yi Tianzi said. Yi Fuxian and others showed surprise, and the state teacher turned out to be Yi Tianzi's teacher. "His Majesty is here for him." Guoshi faced Hua Fengliu. "Yes, teacher, today's Fenghua party is over. It's Yi Fuxian, Hua Jiu, and the rest of their lives. The three of them have extraordinary talent and unparalleled potential. Future achievements may be above me." Yi Fuxian won the Fenghua party. Treating the teacher's injury, "I don't want to disturb the teacher, but I accept the translator as a virtuous daughter. His father's injury, I have to make it difficult for the teacher to take pictures myself," Yi Tianzi said. "It is indeed a dragon and a phoenix among people." The Chinese teacher nodded, and then faced Hua Fengliu. "How is your injury?" Hua Fengliu once again let go of her shattered life and soul, and then leaned weakly on Nan Duan's body. He didn't have the strength to speak, but Yi Fuxian said, after the master's life and soul were wiped out, he forcibly reshaped the battle of life and soul. It can be cured, but it is not a day's work, especially the soul is broken, and it takes a long time to recover. Can he restore his soul? Yi Fuxian lost his voice, and even Hua Fengliu's heart trembled. He never thought about it. Others can't do it, no wonder the teacher can do it. Yi Tianzi said with a smile. The Yi Fuxian was shocked when they heard this sentence, and shouted at Yi Tianzi again, "Thank you, Your Majesty. You should thank my teacher." Yi Tianzi laughed. The teacher shook his hand. "Your Majesty must speak tilde. This is the right thing. He needs to stay here for treatment these days, and you and I will not entertain you. Here. Thank you, seniors." Yi Fuxian bowed his hand to thank him, and the meaning of joy in Hua Ziyu's beautiful eyes revealed that father's life and soul could be restored. Nandu Wenyan's eyes were a little red. In all these years, he never expected. "Because of that, then you should stay with the teacher. If there's something you can go to the mountain to find someone to report to." Yi Tianzi told Yi Fuxian, and they took Princess Yi Lingxi away and left. Ellipsis. At the end of Kangai Gafeng Huaban, countless powerful people gathered in the Nandu King City, which was also a national concern. Nandu country listening to the wind banquet is about to be held. Chapter 128. Luo Tianzi changed his life. Nandu country, Wangcheng. The majestic ancient city. Now I don't know how many strong people came. There are 36 cities in Nandu country, each city has many cities, and each city has a Wufu academy. Today, the younger generation of geniuses in various cities and towns are gathered in Nandu City, which is different from the Kangai Kingdom's Fenghua party. Nandu Guo listened to the Wind party. There is no registration for the preliminary test. Do something. After all, Kangai Gafeng Huayan is held once every 3 years. He wanted efficiency and fast speed. Listening to the annual Nandu Guo, the Wind party is getting more and more grand. The Donghaifu people naturally arrived one after another, not only the junior characters participating in it, but also some strong people who wanted to witness the prosperity of the world also came to Wangcheng. The strong man of the East China Sea Palace in Donghai naturally will not miss this golden age. Yan Shao, the owner of Zibai Palace, personally led the team, along with others who led the great disciples of the East China Sea Palace. The beasts flew through the air, and the disciples of Takai Zugong ignored the beautiful ancient city below, with a slight wave in their hearts. Can they shine with the Wind party this time? Zhuo King, the most important disciple of Yan Weishao, the owner of Zibai Palace, was among the crowd. He stood on top of the monster and looked at the royal city in front of him. Even if it is the current situation, Tianzhou is like a cloud, with his talent, must also have a place. Of course, Zhuo King did not have absolute confidence. Who knows how many extraordinary people have been born in Nandu country in 10 years, and who dares to say that he can stand out? At this moment, Zhuo Qing's mind couldn't help but think of a figure, a young man with a noble style, except for him, unfortunately, only 1 month away from what happened in the East China Sea, where he had to escape. Zhou Mu was also among his fellow disciples at the East China Sea Academy, and his teacher Huasheng was here. Lin Ziyu, also among the students of the East China Sea Academy, is a little more mature than when she first met Yi Fuxian on a ship in the East China Sea. At the age of 17, she took off a little immature, more beautiful, and her curves also more perfect. At the beginning of this year, the East China Sea Academy Spring Palace, he participated, stepped into the East China Sea Academy, and now he wants to come to see the Wind party. In the distance, another row of figures shouted, someone shouted, Palace Lord Yan. Yan Shao turned to look over there, and couldn't help but laugh. Do the disciples of the Nandu family also intend to participate in this listening party? These people were from the Nandu family in Donghai City. The strong Nandu family nodded slightly, and their hearts were complicated. Everything that happened to the Nandu family on the last day of the 10,000-year divine land changed things. Now, they need to show more dependence on the kingdom to survive. Listening to the Wind party, they will naturally come to the show. The two strong men lined up silently, and above the void, there were endless strong men. As they continued to move forward, their eyes could faintly see the majestic palace, which was more solemn and sacred in the sun. At this time, in the palace and the main hall, Luo Tianzi stood there quietly, watching the news scrolls sent by his men. The news is about Kangai Gafeng Huaban, which is held once every 3 years, and some very extraordinary figures will appear. The news naturally attracted the attention of the Nandu country. But even if he would pay attention, this kind of news would generally not be passed on to him. 3 years later, a group of Tianzhou characters appeared as descendants. As the emperor of the Nandu kingdom, should he pay attention to these things? How can there be so much energy? However, this volume of news was conveyed to him because of some names that should not appear on Feng Huayan. Kangyi Gafeng Huayan Fenghua's list topped the rankings, Yi Fuxian. This name is very familiar. As the son of heaven, he should not pay attention to a young man, but this person has been concerned with the left, Hua, and the prince. Therefore, he sent a letter a month ago. He said that Nandu is domestic, meaning it is God's providence. However, in the end, Yi Fuxian escaped from the Nandu kingdom. I didn't expect to see his name again, but he will be on the Kangai kingdom's list. Full genius, soul and soul twin, since running to the Fenghua party, naturally the first. Luo Tianzi smiled. Yi Fuxian has shown his terrible talent in the Nandu family in the East China Sea, so that he can get Fenghua. It is not surprising that the number one person is on the list, because he is participating, he must be the number one. The fourth name is Hua Ji, who is also very familiar. Should be the princess of her country. Passing my will. Luo Tianzi looked up and made another decision, just like he did a month ago, still about Yi Fuxian's will. He knew that this time it was even more likely to succeed, but he still took out a will. Ellipsis. King Kangai City, Royal Palace, on the mountain. Yi Fuxian and the rest of their lives practiced quietly on the mountain while waiting for the teacher to recover, without going out and walking around. Yi Fuxian knew that he won first place at the Fenghua banquet and told the story of Nandu country in public, so he had to be careful in his actions in the future. Teacher. Yi Fuxian, who was practicing the piano, stopped when he saw a figure coming, and a smile appeared on his face. Hua Fengliu walked alone, and his appearance was much better than before, and he looked very excited, and his injuries would recover soon. Nan Duyan and Tang Lan accompanied him. Yi Fuxian sometimes thought that Aunt Tang was speaking loudly. In fact, he still wanted to be with the teacher. It seems that the teacher also agrees with this woman. In his eyes, Tang Lan took care of the flowers back to Donghai City. How do you feel? At this time, the Chinese teacher Xianfeng Tao came to Hua Fengliu and asked. Much better. My seniors have been working hard lately. Recover well, you can't use your strength today, and the soul repair takes longer, so you don't have to go down the mountain for a while. Guo Shidao. Understood. Hua Meri nodded. The teacher turned to Hua Ziyu and said, I saw your practice yesterday. Can I see your soul? Ha! Hua Jiyu nodded slightly and took a step forward. The beautiful soul was released, like a noble queen, wearing a crown. The state master stood still, his body couldn't help but shake, then he looked at Nandu Wenyan and said, What about your life soul? Nan Duan's voice was strange, but it also released the soul of life. While it's not pretty, it's also amazing. The teacher's body shook, and then he saw that he slowly knelt down, fell to the ground, bowed and worshipped, See your majesty. This. Nan Duan's face changed, and Yi Fuxian stood up and looked at the scene in surprise. I am the protector of southern Dukoku, Mo River. The old man said in a trembling voice, I didn't expect that one day I would see the offspring. Elderly wake up first. Nandu Wenyan was surprised, not only him, but everyone here did not expect that the state master of the Kangai kingdom would become the protector of the country. Of course, the Nandu country here wouldn't be what it is now. Nandu country, but once. Is the princess descended from His Majesty? The old man stood up slowly, asked in a trembling voice. Well, that's my grandfather. It is said that when the nobles of the Luo family ascend to the throne, grandfather returns to the Nandu family in Donghai City to take refuge. Nandu Wenyan nodded. His Majesty did the right thing. He did not leave but died, and Luo Tianyin will not let him go. The old man's voice showed hatred. What happened to the predecessors? Why did my grandfather and my parents never return after leaving the Nandu family? What does that have to do with Luo Tianzi? Nan Duan asked. Luo Tianyin is Luo the Emperor's real name. He only knew that the East Phoenix Emperor and Yi King dominated the Eastern Divine Land 300 years ago. The armies of the world are in chaos. King Nandu was killed overseas. Nandu is in a state of chaos. Many armies are fighting for the throne. At that time, Luo Tianyin was born, destroyed everything with the Prince Realm, ascended to the throne, and the Luo clan replaced the Nandu clan. After Luo Tianzi ascended the throne, people's hearts trembled. In order to show the emperor's grace, Luo Tianzi spared the world, regardless of those who hated him. The world returned to worship, the Nandu country quickly stabilized, the Nandu family returned to Donghai City to take refuge, escape disaster. Luo Tianyin was a beast. At that time, he was His Majesty's servant. He was extremely talented. His Majesty treated him like a disciple. This coincided with the turbulent circumstances that year. His Majesty left Nandu country in pursuit of greater power. Ambition Luo Tianyin's wolf, he actually took time when His Majesty was in danger. His Majesty did not prepare a tragic hand, his luck was stolen, and I also seriously injured a pair of eyes. I am afraid that Luo Tianyin thought I was dead. The old man trembled and said, Luo Tianyin turned his life against the heavens and ascended the throne to replace the Nandu royal family. In order not to be eliminated by the people of the world, he did not move the Nandu family, but there must be a dark way behind the ground. I don't know where to go I'm afraid I want to investigate what happened next. Why didn't his predecessor announce his evil deeds to the world? Nandu Wenyan was furious when he heard what happened then. If I announce, the Nandu family will perish completely. The old man sighed. I came to the incognito of the Kangai kingdom in these years, and taught Tianzi to study and practice so that the Kangai kingdom is strong and destroys the Luo family. Yi Fuxian did not expect such a secret situation. He suddenly wanted to understand many things. Luo Tianzi came to Donghai City with a will, and the confession was Prince-Princess. It turned out that not only because of the left phase he counted the number of lives. The sad Nandu family didn't know that Luo Tianzi couldn't witness Ziyu's awakening at all, unless his surrender was controlled by him and became the princess. Moreover, it turned out that Luo Tianzi had changed his life once in the past. Naturally, he was not afraid of the number of lives. Now he is stronger, he is a prince. How could he fear his two descendants who had the number of souls? While they were chatting here, the envoy from the Nandu kingdom in the Kangai king's palace came to see the emperor of the Kangai kingdom. Chapter 129, Party. In the palace hall of King Kangai, the envoy of the Nandu kingdom saw him, and Yi Tianzi sat on the throne. Nan Daoguo's envoy met Yi Tianzi. The messenger arrived and bowed to worship. Get up, Yi Tianzi said. Your Majesty, said the messenger, looking at Yi Tianzi, I came from His Majesty the King of the Nandu kingdom. I heard that the sovereign of the Nanfu kingdom Yi Fuxian and Hua Ziyu were in the palace of King Kangai. Yi Tianzi handed that person over to my Nandu country. They have entered my Kangai country, and Huaji has been memorized as a princess. For my virtuous daughter, you tell your Majesty that they will have nothing to do with Nanduguo in the future. Don't use the word rebel again. Yi Tianzi said coldly, with majesty in his body. They used to be members of the East China Sea government in Nandu country and rebelled against the will of the rebellious emperor, but it was rebellious. Is it a bit wrong for Yi Tianzi to act in such a way? The messenger declared to Yi Tianzi. Proud. Someone next to him released a cold breath and enveloped the messengers, but seeing the messengers staring at Yi Tianzi, looked calm, not humble. I repeat, now they are my Kangyi kingdom. Hua Xiu is the princess, Yi Fuqian is the future horse, did you hear me clearly? Yi Tianzi is not angry, the prince is coming, the messenger is just coming, the messenger is just feeling an invisible trend in his head. My country is willing to trade one man for another, said the minister, lowering his head. I will fight the city alone, and you can come back to life. Yi Tianzi said coldly. There is a war on the border between the two countries. The border town today belongs to the Nandu country, and tomorrow it might be the Kangai country. Maybe that will change in a few days. To the emperor of a country, what was the use of a city? The messenger bowed his hands and bowed to worship, and then said, my country Nandu will soon hold a banquet to hear the wind. He will invite the emperors of all nations to observe the ceremony. His Majesty Nandu's country ordered me to send an invitation and invite Yi Tianzi to attend the ceremony. After all, he took out an invitation, handed it to the front, someone came to pick it up, and then offered it to Yi Tianzi. Yi Tianzi glanced and smiled. Okay, tell your Majesty, I will go to the banquet. Nandu country congratulates Yi Tianzi at any time and retires. The messenger bowed and bowed, then backed away, exited the hall all the way, and then worshipped, then turned and left. After he left, Yi Tianzi put down the invitation in his hand and thought about it. This time, Luo Tianzi actually invited the emperors of all countries to watch the ceremony, so sure about the wind party. Standing up, Yi Tianzi stepped into the main hall. Yi Fuxian didn't know anything about it. Even though he knew it might catch Nandu country's attention, he didn't expect that the other party would come to ask for someone so soon. On the mountain, the Mohe state master said to Hua Ziyu, Princess Ziyu's life spirit seems to have evolved. I once followed His Majesty, and I know this life soul better. In the future, Princess Ziyu can stay here to practice and both of them can be taught to Princess Xiu. A strange color appeared in Huajiayu's beautiful eyes, then nodded, thank you senior. I am a disguise, even your Majesty does not know my real identity, you can still call our teacher outside. Mo Hedao. Everyone nodded. Yi Fuxian was also a little emotional, but did not expect that in a foreign country, he could meet the old royal family protector of the Nandu kingdom. At that time, King Nandu's room was moved, and he moved to Donghai Prefecture to take refuge. I didn't dare, just because I was afraid that Luo Tianzi would attack them. Luo Tianyan, who was once the guardian of the Nandu royal family, became the son of heaven, and a letter of intent to the Nandu family shook. All of this is a bit ironic. Someone's coming, said the teacher, then left. After a while, Yi Danshan and Yi Lingxi came here. Meet master. Both bowed, respectfully. Your Majesty doesn't have to be polite, Mohe said. Guoshi, let's find Yi Fuxian and them. Yi Danshan said. Mohe nodded, and Yi Fuxian walked to this side, and said, is there something wrong with your Majesty? Not long ago, the ambassadors of the Nandu national government came to see father and asked father to hand over the two of you. Yi Danshan said. Yi Fuxian's eyes shone and he came quickly. Father Wang naturally rejected him, but the ambassador of the Nandu kingdom then issued an invitation to invite Wang's father to watch the ceremony and listen to the wind party. The father deliberately brought the top 10 people of the Fenghua party and asked if you wanted to go. Yi Danshan Yi Fuxian rode. Listen to the wind party. Yi Fuxian's eyes stagnate. How familiar he is. Once in the Nandu Kingdom, Zhuo Xiang asked him to go to Nandu King City to participate in the Wind Party in the spring of this year. He also made this plan and plans to start first go, but in a short time, it felt like a long time, and then heard the Wind Party, as if it was like another generation. Is Nandu State listening to the Wind Party now? Go. Yi Fuxian nodded without hesitation. He wanted to see Luo Tianzi with his own eyes, and his goal was to determine his fate. He wasn't worried about security. Although Kangai country and Nandu country are enemies, the two sides have been entangled for hundreds of years, but there has never been a real war or destruction. Sometimes, some big wars will be scary. There is a fragile balance between countries, and no one can easily break it. The reason is very simple, because the emperor of the two countries is a powerful prince, and no one can help. The true fate of the country is not the strength of the army, but the strength of the most prominent figures. As for the Nandu royal family, the heavenly sun fell, and the Nandu royal family was immediately expelled and reduced to history. If he followed Yi Tianzi to observe the ceremony, Luo Tianzi wouldn't be able to start even if he wanted to kill him. Otherwise, what would be the consequences of Yi Tianzi entering the palace with the anger of Nandu King City? In the battle of the prince characters, others are afraid that there is only one way to go. Therefore, even among enemy countries, everyone will obey some potential regulations very quietly. Except, one of the country's emperors was already strong enough to kill the enemy emperor on the spot. In the world of practitioners, personal power is better than all. The so-called king is brought only by personal power. Since Yi Tianzi asked Yi Danshan to ask him, he naturally knew this. The more he was in Nandu State, the less likely Luo Tianzi would start. You want to go? Yi Lingxi looked at the rest of her life and Hua Ji. You will not go, he will take care of my teacher. Yi Fuxian said, in fact, there is no problem in treating Nandu Wenyan and Tanglan, moreover the injury has recovered, but Hua Ziyu will follow the country Shimoha's training is related to his future training. Okay, Yi Danshan nodded, then I will look for someone else and wait for you when I leave. Very well, thank you, Your Majesty. Yi Fuxian nodded, and Yi Danshan and Yi Lingxi then left together. Do you really want to go to Nandu King City? Hua Fengliu looked at Yi Fuxian. Well, I planned to leave earlier, just to take this opportunity. Yi Fuxian smiled. Careful, Hua Feng Ludao. Teacher, you can take care of yourself and restore your soul. Otherwise, it will be a shame if you are defeated by your disciples in a year or two. Yi Fuxian smiled. Well, once my wound is fully healed, I will advise you to train. Hua Fengliu smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. Seeing the smile on his face, Yi Fuxian shuddered and said, Teacher, you are very talented. This is a disciple who can regain your cultivation. Hua Fengliu nodded in satisfaction, and Yi Fuxian cursed shamelessly, even wanting to bully his disciple. Ellipsis. On the morning of the next day, outside the palace, a group of people gathered together in the same place. Who was the most famous player in the Fenghua party? Yi Fuxian, the rest of his life, and Yi Danshan came over, and suddenly everyone's eyes were on him, with different expressions. Yi Fuxian seems to be the people of the Nandu Kingdom, and this time, they will go to the Nandu Kingdom to observe the ceremony and see how the dazzling genius character appears in the Nandu Kingdom's banquet. Where's Hua Ji? Lin Yueyao couldn't help but ask Hua Ji. He has nothing to do. Yi Fuxian looked at Lin Yueyao a little unexpectedly, but he didn't expect that he would ask for comments. Lin Yueyao nodded slightly and said nothing. A moment later, a group of people from the palace came out. It was Yi Tianzi and the others. Apart from Yi Tianzi, there were several figures of extraordinary temperament who would definitely become strong men. A roar came from the palace, and when the people looked up, they saw a terrible monster coming, scary, but a dragon. This dragon came to this side, not far from Yi Tianzi. Let's go when you are here. This trip will take you, but also let you see the Tianjiao people in other countries. Don't limit yourself to the place where the Kangai Kingdom is. Maybe one day, you may leave the Kangai Kingdom. Yi Tianzi, he said with a smile, and then walked towards the dragon, and they followed Yi Tianzi's steps and came to the dragon's back. With a loud roar, the wind screamed, the dragon emptied out, and was shaken upwards until it entered the clouds and walked through the sky, at a very fast speed, heading straight for Nandu. King Kangai was more than 100,000 miles away from Nandu King City. However, how terrifying this dragon is, it travels with the wind. One day later, he came to Nandu King City's place. At this time, countless powerful people in the Nandu Kingdom gathered. Nandu Kingdom Luo Tianzi even invited the emperors of neighboring countries to come watch the ceremony. However, when the dragon passed, there was still a lot of light coming, watching the dragon lying on the dragon's back in shock, guessing the identity of Yi Tianzi and others in his heart. This ferocious dragon is so fierce, it must be a very strong monster, who can control such a monster. Yi Tianzi stood there quietly at this moment, letting the wind howl and blow his body, His hair drifted, and he saw Yi Fuxian beside him standing there, staring at Nandu King City. How do you feel? Yi Tianzi asked with a smile, and Yi Fuxian came here, probably with a wave of the heart. I was wondering when I could set foot in King Nandu's palace. Yi Fuxian stared into the distance with a faint smile on his face and a calm voice. Chapter 130, Defeat Yi Fuxian. As the dragon drew near to the Nandu King Palace, a row of figures came from the sky, and the dragon roared loudly. Stop. Yi Tianzi said. Xiaolong stopped, and those who came bowed to Yi Tianzi and others. Meet Yi Tianzi. What is wrong? Yi Tianzi asked. By His Majesty's orders, come to see us and have arranged a palace for Yi Tianzi. That's human. Lead the way. Yi Fuxian said lightly. The others nodded, and then led the way forward until he arrived at a large palace not far from the palace. Even though the two countries were enemies, they were naturally invited to attend the ceremony. Everything in the palace was well organized and prepared for their feast. Yi Tianzi is the emperor of the Kangai kingdom. Of course it was impossible to share the palace with people outside the Kangai kingdom. Yi Fuxian, you come with me. Although Luo Tianzi must not start with you, but you must not leave the palace. For sure, let Jingyu accompany you even if there is an important event. Yi Tianzi asked Yi Fuxian. Dao said that Jingyu was his guard, and all the things he had to do for a week were directly ordered to do. I'll pay attention. Yi Fuxian nodded. Although Luo Tianzi couldn't fight him clearly, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't kill him or marry someone else, and there was no evidence that he couldn't find him. The feast was completed in the palace, but the outside world was boiling. Tomorrow will be tomorrow. The golden age of 10 years is greater than the Kangai kingdom's Fenghua banquet. The whole country is paying attention. Boiling. Everyone is looking forward to hearing tomorrow's party. An hour later, outside the palace, a mighty figure came straight into the palace. The head is a beautiful woman, she seems to be in an extraordinary position and the guards behind her are very strong. Jingyu appeared in front of him and said, Yi Tianzi went to the palace, and the intruders were mercilessly killed. I'm looking for Yi Fuxian. The woman looked at Jingyu. Jingyu's eyes flickered, hesitating. Since Yi Tianzi is in the palace, are you still worried about what we can do? The woman continued. Jingyu thought for a moment, and said, I will take you there. Speaking of stepping forward, he took the woman and others to a place in the palace, and Yi Fuxian and others stayed here. Seeing the group of people who came, Lin Yueyao and others showed curiosity and went to Yi Fuxian's courtyard. Yi Fuxian sat in the courtyard, and saw someone stunned. Yi Fuxian, explain to me, why join the Kangai kingdom? The woman said as if she had come to Xingshi to plead guilty, very angry. Yi Fuxian looked at the wayward beauty, and said indifferently, you are asking me. It turned out that this woman was the princess of the Nandu kingdom. As a princess, she was naturally Luo Tianzi's daughter and the prince's sister. My teacher gave you an order, my brother asked you to take responsibility, and you refused. My father and king personally ordered you to serve you as a prince. Where do you regret? Because of the flower interpretation. So you betrayed Nandu and go to Kangai. Luo Mengyan said. Go. Yi Fuxian glanced at each other coldly. Is this woman an idiot? Where is he sorry? You. Luo Mengyan fingered Yi Fuxian and said, you bastard, I killed you. While talking about his body moving forward, he saw Yi Fuxian stand up and step forward, as if thinking about some bad memories. Luo Mengyan's body stiffened. I came to witness the ceremony with His Majesty, and I will not dwell on past grievances, please return to the princess. Yi Fuxian said weakly, and the people watching around him knew that this woman was actually the daughter of the Nandu country. Many people couldn't help but look at Yi Fuxian strangely. What did this guy do to the other princess? You betrayed Kang Yeguo, and it also affected my teacher. Now the teacher doesn't ask for foreign affairs and no longer cares about me. All this puts you in danger. Luo Mengyan's eyes turned red, and Yi Fuxian showed an astonished expression. Zhao Xiang's implication was something he didn't expect. Speaking of this, it was caused by the left phase, but he also felt that the left phase was a good intention. The life of the king should have nothing to do with the left phase. Now, as an astrologer, the left phase has not asked about foreign affairs. Yi Fuxian took Xiang Ling from his body and threw it at Luo Mengyan. This Xiang Ling returned it to me on the left, and by the way, said that things are unpredictable, and I don't blame him for this. You don't blame the teacher. Luo Mengyan picked up Xiang and looked at him angrily. You can go. Yi Fuxian issued an order to drive the guest away. Luo Mengyan looked at Yi Fuxian coldly, then turned around. The people outside the courtyard gave way, but when Luo Mengyan stopped suddenly, she turned to Yi Fuxian and asked, you said your boyfriend looks better than me. How beautiful is Hua Xiaoyu to you? The betrayal of the warrior nation. At least you don't deserve to be compared to him. Yi Fuxian said coldly. Luo Mengyan's thoughts were too simple. I think Luo Tianzi and Prince Edward's booklet is good for him. Maybe from his point of view, he didn't want his father and brother to think badly. Luo Mengyun looked at Yi Fuxian coldly, and then left here. After he left, Lin Yueyao looked at Yi Fuxian strangely and asked, "What have you done to the princess of the Nandu kingdom?" Yi Fuxian looked at Lin Yueyao with a smile like a smile, said, "Are you going to give it a try?" Seeing Yi Fuxian's mischievous eyes, Lin Yueyao said, "No need." Turning and leaving, Bai Qiu, Yu Jiang, and the others watched this scene silently. Lin Yueyao is Kang Yeguo's first beauty, always cold, but she took the initiative to talk to Yi Fuxian several times, but Yi Fuxian just, completely ignoring the former first beauty of Kangai Kingdom, made him feel very depressed. This gap. Who made Yi Fuxian's girlfriend look prettier than Lin Yueyao? Go and turn around, Zhao Qianfan said. Now that the Nandu King City Fengaian Club was able to walk around, the Emperor of the Nandu Kingdom invited them to come and observe the ceremony, so there wasn't much energy to deal with them. Yu Jiang nodded, and the group walked outside the palace. Yi Fuxian did not go, and practiced in the palace. One day passed quickly. In the morning of the next day, someone from the Nandu Kingdom came to the palace and saw Yi Tianzi. Yi Tianzi met the people, Yi Fuxian and all of them came here, and saw the people of the Nandu Kingdom come forward and salute, said, "The Majesty of our country ordered me to come and invite Yi Tianzi to the palace, and some of them go to the wind party. What about them?" Yi Tianzi looked at Yi Fuxian and the others. "Only a few highnesses were invited this time, and the rest let them go alone, and then they will join Yi Tianzi again." The newcomer smiled. Yi Tianzi said nothing and then said to Jingyu, "Take him there." "Yes, Your Majesty." Jingyu nodded, and Yi Tianzi left with the people from Nandu State. "Let's go," Jingyu said. In addition to him, there are several strong people in the Kangai Kingdom, and a group of people left the palace, and then headed straight for the palace. Outside the palace, there is the mighty figure of Wang Cheng moving in the same direction, which is the direction of the palace. The place to listen to the wind party is outside the south gate of the Nandu King Palace. At this time, the crowd is even more terrifying than the real Kangai Gafeng Huaban. After Yi Fuxian's arrival, they were almost drowned by the sea and headed forward. I saw 9 high platforms outside the south gate, standing side by side, and surrounded by a huge open space. There was a throne and standing in front of a high platform. Ordinary people can go. A large crowd, from all sides of the Nandu Kingdom, Donghaifu, naturally arrived. The people from the Nandu family were standing somewhere in the crowd, quietly watching the throne and standing in front of the high platform, where the people from the royal family were sitting. Their Nandu family was supposed to be sitting there, but now they could only sit there. Looking down, come to the Fenghua party. If it hadn't happened a month ago, the translator would have been a princess, and our Nandu family would have been able to sit there. There was a young junior in the Nandu family who spoke coldly. All of this was destroyed by Yi Fuxian. Think no more, and stop Jacquard. Several elders scolded him. Waji was now a sinner of the Nandu Kingdom, and their Nandu family naturally cut off all ties with Waji. Yes. The younger nodded his head and looked at the large crowd. He will participate in this listening party. Many Tianzhou people who came today may be his opponent. His gaze continued to look around the crowd, and he paused as he swept in a direction, frowned, and then turned around, finally falling on the line of figures walking forward. Yi Fuxian, the young man shouted, and everyone in the Nandu family looked at him, and an elder said, "Nonsense. Yi Fuxian, how can it appear in listening to the party?" There. The young man pointed his finger in one direction, and his eyes were shocked. He was not surprised, but it was clearly Yi Fuxian's figure. The man in the Nandu family looked at his finger tilde, then his eyes fell on the recipe, and finally, one of the handsome figures was locked. The eyes of the powerful Nandu family hardened and their eyes shone. Yi Fuxian dared to come to listen to the wind party. Are you looking for death? Go, catch him. The strong people of the Nandu family rushed off in that direction instantly. What happened in Donghai City in the past was unforgettable for the Nandu family. Not only was the Waji language taken, but also a group of strong people. There isn't any. All of this was because of Yi Fuxian. Don't let him go. A young man shouted, worried that Yi Fuxian was mixed in with the crowd, thinking that this person was so brave, so he dared to come to the feet of Tianzi and come to the place where the party was being held. After dropping it, he handed it over to Tianzi to ask for a sin. Someone said, even the way to deal with Yi Fuxian has found the answer. Yi Fuxian betrayed the king's life, but he is a sinner.